And now, fresh off a 30-year break from his life in over-the-air radio, here's the host of the most originally named 15 Years Too Late podcast, JaySapChats.
All right, JaySapChats, and very special guest with me, someone I've come close to in the last really 8 years, and helped guide my son through an awesome junior golf career, and has guided a lot of families through a lot of junior golf careers, including the captain of the Ryder Cup, Keegan Bradley. And his family comes from a long golf heritage, and I can't wait for this episode because I know Dave's got some of the best stories you'll ever hear. Dave Adamonis, thanks for joining me.
Happy to do it. Looking forward to the Ryder Cup. Huge anticipation. Wish Keegan was actually playing.
Well, that's that. We'll get to that. So the Challenge Cup. Let's talk about that for just a sec. Like, your dad started the Challenge Cup. It's over 50 years old now.
We started in 1983. I was playing junior
42.
golf. Just a totally different world that we were living in back then. I mean, golf was really for lack of, I guess, just being straight up, it was a white man's game, right? That was played by adult males, generally fathers, and access to golf courses was very limited for everybody else. And my dad just had a completely different vision of what golf should represent. And his vision was that people of, all gender, all race, all age should have the same access to play this game. And if you speed ahead now to look at what the game represents, he was clearly a visionary.
So the Challenge Cup, for those who don't know, is the best junior golf circuit in not only New England, but I actually believe it stretches down to New York. And how many events do you run annually?
Right around 40. I mean, I would say from regional programs, there's really not one that's much better than ours. We're very thorough in what we do, and not only offering our players a competitive schedule, but we really take a lot of pride in our kids moving on to the next level, which is college. And that's our drop-off point. Keegan's a great story as far as the professional piece goes, but for every Keegan Bradley, there's 100 other guys that tried to make it and never ended up, making a career of it. It's so difficult to, there's so many guys that have actually had, brief spans as players, and having a brother who is really a journeyman, I guess you'd say, when it comes to professional golf. That's what he's done his whole living, playing competitive golf. I've gotten a chance to see it on a different end, from a different perspective.
We'll get to Keegan, but let's go back to 1983. You're playing junior golf. Who was the first person in the Challenge Cup that really threatened the professional golf ranks?
Oh, that's easy. So one year we're playing, I think it was like Fall River Junior Open. I'm pretty sure that was the tournament. And this guy named Brett Quigley, I want to say he shot like maybe 90 the first year he played. And then the next year he came back and he was shooting 0. And both he and a friend of his, another lad by the name of Pat Cannon, those two players, Cannon unfortunately died in a tragic car accident. He and Brett were best friends with one another. He was just as talented as Brett was, but Brett was really our first player that didn't threaten the pro ranks. He's actually had a pretty good career, playing as a professional. So, he was really our first guy.
Yeah. So Brett, is Dana's son, right?
He's actually Paul's son. Dana
Paul's
is,
son.
yeah,
Yes,
Dana,
I knew
Dana's
that. His uncle. Yeah.
Yeah. But certainly some pretty good lineage there.
Yeah. All right. So he's your first. And then, like, when you evaluate, back then you were playing, right? So you played against Brett, right?
Yep.
When you lined up against Brett, did like as a junior player, did you know that he was something special, or like you said, he shot 90 in his first year, he was like a, not very good, but then he came back and like, do you know who the special players are even back in 83, 84?
Probably not. I think when you're playing up against other kids, it's kind of hard to know who who they're going to be. And now when I see somebody, if I feel like there's a good chance they're going to make it as a pro, I feel like I've got a pretty good eye for it now. I think maybe back then you don't have the same experience. You haven't got a chance to see the difference in how these players get to, there's a special level of commitment. You have to be willing to sacrifice things. I mean, if you want to be successful in anything in life, there's a commitment, there's a sacrifice that you have to make if you want to be one of the best. And as a kid, you probably don't really understand who those people are that are making, those commitments and sacrifices. But as you get older and you see, and then the other thing is you can just see, that raw ability, that natural talent that's there. Because some players, they're as good as they're going to be as junior golfers, believe it or not, because they don't have anything else in life, that might take them away from the game. I mean, once kids get to college, sometimes there's other things. There's girls. There's maybe having a good time. There's a social element to everything. So, when you're younger and you're playing a game that you love, and that's the only care in the world you have, sometimes those players, that's as good as they're going to be. I mean, I think Kenny Lewis was he'd be one of the best examples. Still a very talented golfer, but I think his best golf was played when he was maybe 15 years old, and he was a phenom. I mean, I'd say it's kind of hard to equate. He definitely was one of the best junior golfers in the country as a 15-year-old. He certainly was one of the best amateur players in New England. So, um, but he's a guy that, had two great friends, Brent Warner and Mike Carbone. And, at the end of the day, Warner ended up being the best of all of them. And he probably could have played on the PGA Tour, but, you got to be a special breed to want to play golf and to do it for a living. You're living out of a suitcase essentially, and a lot of times on your own. So, Brent had a different vision as to what he wanted to do in life, and he's super successful living in France now. But, of all time, when I look at players, he'd probably be, just as far as raw ability, he'd be up there with Keegan and Thorby Johnson,
Oh, wow.
as far as what he brought to the table.
Yeah, so let's quantify, right? New England golf, it's not that good. There's not that many players. Nobody comes out of New England. You got to be from California. You got to be from Florida. You have to play year round. Like, let me talk about recent history. Okay, so
Yeah.
Vanderbilt, the number one team in the country, or at least top 5 team in the country in college, has John Broderick and Ryan Downs, both from New England. Ben James, who's played in half a dozen, maybe more PGA Tour events, just finished on the Walker Cup team, played the Challenge Cup Tour over the last half a dozen years.
Yeah.
Michael Thorbjornsen. I still go back and look at scoreboards where my son was actually competitive with Michael Thorbjornsen. Believe me, he's not competitive with Michael Thorbjornsen, but they played in the same fields in the World Series of golf.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a handful of them. There's others that countless that have made the US Am, and more that have made the US Junior Am. All have played on your tour. I mean, the Grazerman family has all played on the Challenge Cup Tour, right? I mean, we saw Grazerman's name on the top of the leaderboards on the PGA Tour. The golf in New England is just, it's absurd. It's out of control how good it is.
The Northeast corridor doesn't get its just due when it comes to golfers, especially if you're, doing it on a per capita. It's just, I think the players from this area, they are probably a little bit more resourceful just because of the conditions that we have to play under. They learn how to play under all conditions, and they've got multiple platforms up here that they can play in during the course of a season. Between state associations, the PGA section, and the Challenge Cup, there's just a ton of competitive offerings. And I always tell people the only way you can get better is compete. Sometimes there's swing coaches that tell kids to shut it down, and I'm like, listen, I'm like, you can shut it down and hit off of that same common lie, same flat lie, and work on technique, but the only way you really get better is by being out on a golf course and dealing with all the conditions, and learn really feel comfortable in your own skin, right? And to feel comfortable when you get into the heat of the battle. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that makes
No question.
Keegan so much different than everybody. He learned how to how to feel comfortable in that environment at a pretty early age, not necessarily as a junior player, but certainly as a collegian.
So let's talk about Keegan. Obviously, he's the captain of the Ryder Cup team. You've, I mean, just first and foremost, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing we both believe that he should have been on the team previous to the one that he was selected as the captain for. The fact that he was left off Zach Johnson's team is crazy. Was it a mistake to name him captain?
So that's a tough question. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't even really know how to quantify why he was asked to be the captain. I because obviously if you're asking a guy to be the captain, you probably think he doesn't really have the ability to play on the team. So like
yeah,
I just thought that it was clearly a mistake the last time that more guys like Keegan weren't weren't on that team. I think it becomes a tough position for some of these guys when they are the captain to be in. I don't know that they end up I would even say with him, I don't know that they end up always choosing the best players. You're in a tough spot. You form these relationships with people.
yeah,
As much as it sounds crazy, it's kind of like the little league thing, right? You have kids that you might pick for different reasons, you know what I mean? And they're
right.
not necessarily the reasons that they're the best players. And the tough thing about the Ryder Cup selection process is they're doing it over 2 years, right? A guy could stack all his points and play his best golf a year ago, and he's not playing good golf right now. So, um, it's hard. It's a difficult process. For me, I would have liked to seen some other guys, get a shot to play. I don't think we had great success when we went to Europe, and we've got some of the same guys that played and didn't play that great over there. We've got guys that are in the best form. I mean, on paper, if you look at Europe versus the United States, I feel like Europe might have guys in better form than we do right now.
Yeah. Now, you come from a golfing family. Um, Keegan comes from a golf family. How old was he when you met him?
I want to say Keegan was, I think, a junior when I first met him. He first started playing in our tournaments. So he was living in Vermont. He moved to Hopkinton. His dad took the head professional job at Hopkinton Country Club in Massachusetts, which consequently meant that he was going to play on a team with a superstar, can't miss PGA Tour player, in my estimation, John Curran. And those two guys quickly became best friends. Keegan was a year older than John, so when he came to Hopkinton, he was a junior in high school, and John was a sophomore. He played a little bit with us, and then he played more as a senior when John was a junior. John was one of the best junior players in the country. He was our best player for 3 years for the Challenge Cup, and John was one of the best junior players in the country. He got beat in the semifinals of the U.S. Junior as a junior in between his junior and senior year of high school. And that was at the Olympic Club. And, you could see that Keegan was going to be, once he was full throttle and all in, it was, look out, this guy could be something else. I knew it.
Well,
But
what do you think? What do you like? What gave it away that he was going to be something else? I mean, he was getting beat by his teammate, and I'm not saying Curran was obviously great. He was your number
yeah,
one. Was he keeping up with him? Was it the distance? Or
I,
is
I
there an
think that,
era?
I think his distance was one, but I think, there's also the variable of, his competitiveness. I think really, listen, he hits the ball a long way, right? And I mean, that's a game that we live in now, right? It's even more prevalent now that you need to hit the ball far, and the courses are all set up. I've been listening for a while. The USGA strayed away from, their textbook setup, and they went to, um, you know, setting it up for bombers, right? They wanted to have the Tigers of the world and the Phils of the world who don't necessarily hit it that straight. They wanted them to be, they knew it was good for TV. It was good for golf to have those guys. And, I think the courses now are set up. On the tour, they're certainly set up for guys who hit the ball further, and even for the major championships, that they're geared a little bit more towards guys that hit the ball
So
further,
he
right?
was always one of the longest.
Yeah, he was definitely longer than most of the players. I mean, just having the pedigree of having a family that came from the golf piece, I think, that kind of led a little bit to my thinking. He definitely was competitive. He wanted to beat John. He couldn't have had a better mark than John. It really, John's work ethic and whatnot. Keegan had similar work ethic, so the two of those guys were just grinding together. And that's the one thing. I mean, it's hard for a lot of junior golfers, I think, to find somebody that kind of matches them as far as their abilities or they're close to one another, and they also have the same work ethic. It's kind of want to do the same thing. And those two guys, they spent a ton of time together. And initially John was pushing Keegan to get better, and then and then it flipped, right? And
Mhm.
Keegan was instrumental in John really getting a PGA Tour card. I mean, I think, John saw that he was capable of doing it. And then I think in addition to that, Keegan exposed him to some players that were playing on the PGA Tour that were really good players. And John started playing games with them. And he was like, wait a minute. He's like, I should be out here. Like, I'm just as good as these guys, So, but I mean, he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about when it comes to professional golf. I mean, almost won the Puerto Rico Open, which is an off event for the PGA Tour, off week event, meaning I can't remember what the opposite event was that was being played.
Still hard.
Yeah, right. Almost won that, got beaten the playoff, and then really most notably got beaten Nicklaus's tournament, the Memorial. Buddy McGirt. He beat him in a playoff, right? I mean, and you wonder, well, what would John be doing right now if he won that playoff? It's hard to say because I don't even know if
Yeah.
I don't know if McGirt right now is even playing, right? And it just goes to show you how hard the game of golf is. I always encourage people to look at um to look at the world rankings and what were they 5 years ago compared to what they are now. It's almost always a completely different list of names. I mean, there might be 10 or 15 guys that consistently stay on that list over like a 5 year period, right? Not even
Yeah.
a 10, right? It's hard to stay relevant in this game. There's just a whole nother wave of guys that are coming up the ladder. And,
Right.
I think,
You're their mark.
yeah. And I think what happens is some of these guys, I don't want to say they get complacent, but they know that they can keep a card, right? Or they think they can keep a card. And sometimes they get a family, and sometimes they don't want to make the same sacrifices,
Yeah.
and that same commitment that they were making in the past. And then oftentimes there's injuries, right? I mean, so like just as an example this year, Thagala, right? He was one of the best players on the
Yeah.
PGA Tour last year. The guy got injured, and quite frankly, if he didn't hadn't won a tournament last year, he wouldn't be playing golf on the PGA Tour this upcoming
Yeah.
season, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he was 154th on the money list. He'd have a medical, but the medicals aren't a great way to try to
Yeah.
keep on,
Well, I mean, listen, Daniel Berger, you would have bet money Daniel Berger would have been on every Ryder Cup or President's Club Cup team there was. I mean, and again, injury sidetracked his career, and then he came back this year, and now injury sidetracked his career again. So, in going back to Keegan, you talk about his dad was the head pro at Hopkins and Country Club. It seems
Yep.
thematic, right? So I mentioned Ryan Downs at Vanderbilt. His dad's a head professional. Justin
Yeah.
Thomas, his dad's a head professional. Furyk's dad was in the golf business and sold clubs. Definitely, has been his only coach throughout his life,
Yep.
and on and on and on and on. Like, how much of an influence is that to a player reaching that next level?
So it's funny. I mean, if you just want to use my dad with my brother and I as an example, right?
Yeah,
My brother absolutely thrived and loved having my father out on the course. And they had a bond. Not to say that my dad and I didn't have a great relationship, but they had a bond that is unlike any other. Just all the experiences that they had together, all the time that they spent together. I was somebody who already was beating myself up if I didn't hit a good shot. So I didn't need to see my father lurking around a tree, you know what I mean, making a face. No, like I already know. Yeah, yeah. All right. I shouldn't have pulled that club, or I should have
Mhm.
thought about doing something different. So I wasn't as receptive to him being out on the course with us. And the funny thing is like two of our best players of all time, both Cameron Wilson and John Curran, their fathers, pass them off. Neither one of them were great golfers themselves. They actually, the one thing they were great at though is they made it their business to know how their sons could be good golfers, and they did everything they could to make that a reality. And but both of those guys dropped their son off, didn't go watch him play, and they were waiting for him on the 18th green when they got done. On the woman's side, Lee Kang, he would watch Megan play, but would never say a word, would never react, and he sure had a lot to say after a round was over. So everybody does it differently. I mean, certainly having people that have been in the arena and played the game, I think bodes well for players.
Yeah.
They've been there, they've done it, they've been in that competitive environment. You don't necessarily have to be in the competitive environment, but if you've been around it and you see it, and for me, I've had a front row seat to it between playing a little bit myself, then seeing my brother play, at an elite level, and having my dad, he coached a national champion at Johnson and Wales University, you know, getting just to see that, to be a part of it, and just being around the game, there's such little intricacies that make a difference in a guy having a card. And I mean, like, what's the difference between Chris Francoeur and Davis Chatfield? Like, it's minimal, when it comes to talent. They both should be out there. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Well, Chris Francoeur right now, 14 on the Americas Tour. He's got 3 events basically to move into the top 10 to get a full-time Corn Ferry card next year. He played at Rhode Island, came up through the Challenge Cup. Davis Chatfield, Attleboro Open winner, Attleboro Junior Open winner, came up through
yeah,
the Challenge Cup. By the way, Dave, you're an Attleboro Open champion, right?
yep,
I'm a 5-time qualifier, never made the cut, including this
yeah.
year because I'm a knucklehead. But like Davis is going to get his PGA Tour card, so it'll be another person who came from your tour to go on to the highest level. And the truth is, if you put them both on the first tee at Wannamoisett, flip a coin. I don't know who I don't know who you'd choose to win that match.
I mean,
And if they play 10 times, it might be 5-5.
yeah, I mean, listen. So part of this whole process is you got to be a little. I don't know how to say it because I don't want to say it's luck, right? Because you got to be good, but the timing of you're playing good golf, like the stars really kind of need to align, right? And so Davis made that happen the first year, which is insane because it's very rare that a guy goes pre-qual, first stage, second stage, final stage, gets status, and is able to keep his card, right?
Yeah.
And every year get a little bit better, so just totally impressive on his part, but that's a difficult thing to do. I mean, listen, Frank Kerr, he should have gotten through the final stage last year. It was terrible. The back nine, he kind of, he
Turned his mind on.
yeah, I think either that or he turned it on, right?
No,
I
that's what I
mean,
said. He turned it on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he lost his process. I think I think he realized how close he was, and it's so hard to stay in the moment and to execute that shot that we're supposed to play. But
Yeah.
that's the only way that the game can be played. I mean, occasionally, if you're hunting somebody at a tournament and you're 3 or 4 back and you feel like you need 68, you can think like that. You know what I mean? But that's a different mode than thinking, hey, I've got 9 to play and all I need to do, right, is shoot even par on the back 9 and I'm in. Now all of a sudden you've gone from attacking to
Yeah.
being in a totally different mindset, and I mean, listen, Frank Kerr, assuming he has the resources to keep playing, he's going to get there. He's if you just look at the scores that he shot this year on the Canadian, on America's tour, on the Canadian, version of it, it's been impressive. I mean, it's just a matter. I wouldn't be surprised if he breezes through Q school, but like once again, it's you've got to be every element of your game has to be on. or else you're not going to get the opportunity to get there, you
I
know?
really wish so. I want to get back to Keegan and his development through the Challenge Cup, and we
Mhm.
will. But I I really wish the PGA Tour would set up, instead of having these kids need the resources to go to Canada to play 10 or 12 events on the Americas Tour and stay in these faraway places that cost so much money to fund. I mean, just an insane amount. I really wish they would go to Myrtle Beach, go dormitory style, chefs, trainers, coaches, and then I don't care if it's 72 holes or 54 holes, and a Monday to Wednesday or whatever the soft days are on some of the championship courses down there, into a 10-week schedule twice a year, 10 and 10, and really focus on the development of some of these young talents. And I bet you could put those names of the kids in a blender, and 10 different kids might come up than the kids that come up in Canada.
Oh, there's no
That's
doubt. I mean, listen, if
that's what I would propose for talent development. And oh, by the way, you're doing it in a bubble. I think COVID showed us, as crazy as that
so,
was, COVID
so
showed us that if you operate in a bubble, you actually can have a pretty decent product.
so the world golf rankings are really what drive the bus on why we're where we're at. And the reason being is in the United States, the each country is only allowed to have, based on the world golf ranking, is only allowed to have X amount of like golf tours that are recognized by the world golf rankings, right? So what ended up happening was is the PGA is like, listen, we still, even though we have the PGA Tour and then the Corn Ferry, we we need another tour to help to develop players, right? And so, and rather than let the ones who were doing it at the time, and they really weren't doing it, with um the ability to have longevity, probably, the New England Pro Tour, which Brian Hebb started, and he did an awesome job with. He unfortunately got involved with some people that he thought were going to help him out. And, that didn't pan out. And consequently, they folded 10. And then you had Tar Heel Tour, which was doing a great job, which is something that kind of is what you were saying. I personally think that if we could really do it the right way and we wanted to have developmental tours, right, we'd have one on the East Coast, maybe one on the West Coast, and another one in the Central. And as the weather changed, you'd move from Florida right up all the way to New England, from Texas all the way up to Michigan, from Southern California all the way up to Washington, right? And that would make it
Do you
give
think it's
players
easier? So you're saying it's easier to get to Florida, from Florida to Georgia than it is to get from Ontario to
Yeah, I
Saskatchewan?
mean, listen, when Brad played on the Corn Ferry Tour, never mind the America's Tour, I'm not exactly sure if I'm referring
Yeah, it's
to it
the Americas
correctly,
tour. Yeah,
but
yeah.
Brad was able to get in a car a lot of times and go from one tournament to another, right? I mean, he'd go from Virginia Beach, to Pennsylvania to Hershey, right? And, then we go from Hershey to New York. So
I
it was
can't even imagine how many times your brother slept in his car in his life.
so my brother was super frugal, I mean, he had other people that were helping him out, so it was other people's money that was basically giving him the ability to play, two entirely unbelievable human beings. I mean, Jim Tierney and John Daniele, and I mean, without the two of them, I mean, my brother would not have had a professional career. I mean, he didn't get a PGA Tour card until he was 35. I mean, one of the great, I always tell people, one of the great trivia questions that you can ask for golf is, especially being a New Englander, name the two guys who earned their PGA Tour cards as rookies at the age of 35. And that would be my brother and Rob Oppenheim. So those are just two incredible stories of perseverance and just, battling. And I mean, even like
I mean,
Oppenheim still got a lot of,
little different resources though.
yeah, so but my point is that, my brother, when he was going from tournament to tournament, I mean, the internet, phones, all that stuff wasn't as prevalent, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
he had a coupon book for hotels, right? And he was using an atlas to figure out how to get around, right? I can remember going to some tournaments with him. It was just an entirely different time. In some. Ways a lot more fun too. I mean, there were adventures every time you went to a tournament, but I just think it's so costly to play this game. I feel like we're if you don't have an abundance of money, it's hard for guys to be able to chase the game for as long as they might need to chase it, right, in order to get where they want to get to. I mean, even if it's like 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, to play golf and to just play golf, right? That's your responsibility. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 if you include life costs, being a member of the
Yeah.
course, all the other expenses that come with, living and whatnot. It's at least $100,000, nut
Yeah.
in order
Tin, tin
to be
cup
able to
doesn't,
play as a professional.
tin
That's
cup
before you
doesn't
make a buck.
exist.
Yeah, you know?
Tin cup doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a fairy tale. Tin cup is a fairy tale.
I'm
World
sorry, say
City,
it.
tin cup is a fairy tale.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the only way it's not a fairy tale is if, I mean, listen, Keegan's story is a pretty good one, right? He was kind of coming to the end of his finances. He asked the guy to help him out, and he won a Hooters event, and that chunk of change helped him get to Q school, and then he got through Q school that year and whatnot. But the way a lot of these guys did it in the past was they had people that supported them to get there, because their families couldn't afford middle class family is not going to be able to afford for a person to become a PGA Tour player. They're just
Right.
not. I mean,
And a head pro job is a middle class family. I mean, that's not a wealthy person's job. I mean, you're serving
yeah,
the wealthy in many cases.
that,
How did Keegan get to St. John's? What was like the St. John's story? Who else was in the game?
uh, this is one of the craziest recruiting stories ever. I was running our last tournament of the year. It's called Challenge Cup Tournament of Champions. We were playing at Quidnessett Country Club. I want to say it was a few days before people made commitments, official commitments on signing day. And my dad was with Frank Dobby, who was the coach at St. John's, at a college tournament. My dad was good friends with him. They traded players a little bit here and there. Like a kid who was looking for something different would go to my dad. My dad would send a kid his way. And so my father was on the phone with me. He's like, "How's it going today?" I said, "It's typical New England day for November." I said, "The conditions aren't great." He's like, he goes, "Hey, Coach Dobby was wanted to talk to you for a minute." And so I get on the phone with him. I'm like, "Hey, Frank, how's it going?" He's like, "You got anybody hanging around?" I got one spot left. He goes, I really could use somebody. He goes, "But it's got to be somebody good." And I'm like, I said, unbelievably, I said, this guy's still hanging around. I said, his name's Keegan Bradley. I said, he's Curran's teammate. And I said, his family has a good lineage. I told him about his aunt. And I'm like, I think this guy's going to be something special. I'm like, I said he could be. And Frank had a lot of success at St. John's. He had Andrew Savoda, who was, still a very good player, who, has toiled on the Corn Ferry Tour and has really, won quite a few tournaments, and kind of moved into a different portion of his career around here. But St. John's was around the top 100 team, sometimes in the 80s, 90s, which is huge for Division I golf in the Northeast corridor. And so he's like, so his question to me was this simple. He goes, "What did he shoot today?" I said, he shot an easy 68. He goes, "Par 72?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then his most important question was, "What did Curran shoot? Did Curran play? What did he shoot?" Because he knew who Curran was. And I said, "Yes, Curran played. He shot 70." And he said, "Tell Keegan I'm going to be calling him." He said, over the next day or two, and he goes, "We'll meet halfway between Hopkinton," and I think Frank was living maybe in Greenwich at the time, and he said, "And I'm going to offer him a full." So the way Frank did it was he offered him full tuition. So all the kids on his team received full tuition. And then the kids usually lived in a golf house as opposed to on campus. So they didn't have to spend a ton of money. So kids were essentially he only had 7 on his roster, and essentially all 7 kids would go to school and they wouldn't have to pay really much of anything, maybe a few bucks to be living in the golf house per se. And 1 week later that they met up in some Irish pub and it was a done deal. And he was going to St. John's. It was that simple.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, you mentioned his aunt's a Hall of Famer, obviously, in the LPGA Tour and has a great lineage. Dad's a head pro. He had great scores. How was he still on the shelf and not recruited?
uh, so at the time he hadn't made much noise. Like he hadn't made noise at a national level. Tom Drennan from URI, was still, he was in the game. He was still interested in him, but he certainly wasn't going to offer him a full, um, and, Tom, I mean, listen, as soon as Frank heard about who he was, and I mean, I think Frank trusted, he saw what my dad did in a very short period of time with the kids that were on his team down at school. And, you know, um, he knew who a lot of our players were. And I think he just trusted, my evaluation of like what kids might be around. Because truth be told, I mean, there really was nobody else. I mean, there might have been a few other people that were kicking the tires with him, but nobody was really, certainly nobody was going to offer him what Frank offered him, I mean, and he was the first guy that really, I mean, listen, I'm the one who believed in him, right? I guess. But he's the one who believed in me, right? And he got an incredibly pleasant surprise. I mean, the first year he played as a freshman, he was in the hunt in every single tournament. He won a tournament, and he, he really, that was the beginning of him learning how to feel comfortable, not only feel comfortable in the environment of trying to chase down a win, but it was like a drug to him. He liked being in that environment. And let's be real, how many people really, I mean, you watch golf, how many guys are comfortable in that environment? How many people want to be in that environment? I mean, listen, I'm sure they all want to win, but the stress definitely cranks up, right? When you're trying to go out and win a tournament. And I mean, ultimately, it's not necessarily being put on you by somebody else. I mean, maybe you could argue Tiger put it on you because of some of the things that he did. But in today's day and age, it's kind of really all about you yourself, right? It's about you going out and executing, and you being able to win the battle with yourself is really what it is.
Yeah,
Right.
my hands have never been shaking in the Saturday and Sunday men's game, but I can assure you that when I've had to write my number down and put the ball on the bottom of the cup and know that everyone's looking and there's a scoreboard, because I do compete a little. I
Yeah.
mean, your hands shake. I mean, there's just no way around it. Like, your hands shake, your stomach, you're doing neuro hacks to try to like get your brain waves to come down and like just be able to swing and breathe and swing the club. I mean, it's a whole new ball game. So just out of curiosity, because you've known Keegan since he's a kid. I know him from the interviews. I don't know Keegan, but
Yep.
you know Keegan. When he goes to St. John and he's a freshman, he's in every tournament, has a chance to win every tournament. Is he a chip on your shoulder type of kid, like day one? Like, does he feel like he owes you something, or is it something else?
So I think that when you say chip on your shoulder, you meaning that he feels like, hey, I'm better than what everybody thought I was, and like you.
I'm from Vermont. Nobody believed in me. The guy from St. John's
So
believed in me.
not initially, because I think they realized that they were a little bit late to the dance, and I mean, I think he expected that maybe some schools from New England would take notice of him a little bit better. But I don't think initially there was a chip. I think, listen, he had a crossroads after his freshman year. Karn wanted him to go to Vandy, and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, listen," he goes, "what do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's not me. That's you." I said, "You got to figure that out for yourself." And he's like, "Well, I want to talk this through." I'm like, "No," I said, "You need to think of the reasons that Vandy's a good place for you." I said, "I think we already know what those would be." I said, "And then you need to, just as importantly, think about why St. John's is a good place to stay."
So behind the scenes, Keegan had a chance to basically, now back in the day, he couldn't go and play right away. He'd had to sit out a year.
Yeah.
Those were the rules. But his best friend from high school, John Curran, who's playing at Vanderbilt, wants him to come. He had a good season. Coach probably wanted him as well.
Yep.
Put Curran up to recruiting him, so to speak, behind the scenes. And Keegan had the chance to transfer to Vanderbilt and play at Vanderbilt instead of St.
Sure.
John's after his freshman year.
Yeah, I was pretty realistic that that could have happened, and so make a long story short, he's trying to he really wants to talk to me about it, and then I keep trying to put him off because I want him to really put some thought into this, because I think, listen, at first I think when anybody asks us, "Hey, you want to go do this?" we don't think too much about what the potential upside could be, or maybe the downside, or why it might be good to stay at St. John's. And I was totally stunned. I thought for sure, listen, you got your best friend going to a school. I thought for sure that he'd bail. And, my recommendation would be 100% stay right where you are. You're learning how to thrive in the environment to try to win golf tournaments. This guy, he believed in you, right? And you've got other kids that are coming to school now because of you, right? That want to start something special here. So like those would have been all the things that I said to him, but I didn't even need to say those things to him. I think he figured out pretty quickly, like, hey, if I stay here, there's a lot of good stuff that's going on here, and I'm going to get a chance to play in every single tournament. I feel like I'm capable of winning every tournament I stick a tee in the ground. And then I think, listen, once he got up to, by the time his career was over, he won, I think, 9 or 10 college tournaments, right? And I think he felt like he wasn't getting his just due when it came to recognition to get into some national tournaments. I know it took him a while to get into the Northeast Am. And I think, I think that's kind of, he felt like, no one's really taking recognition of the wins these wins, right? And I mean, when I had a radio show for a few years, and when I talked to him on the radio show, when he first had some success as a professional, which was very quickly, he alluded to the fact that, listen, he said, if I don't stay at St. John's, he goes, I don't know if I'm the golfer that I am. He said, I learned how to be in the environment of having to execute and win golf tournaments. And, when it came time for him to actually have a chance to do that, he was able to do it, right? I mean, first he did it in a regular pro event, and then shortly thereafter he did it at the PGA Championship, I mean, and so goes the story, right? I mean, he's been solid as a rock. I mean, with the game that he has and the ability that he has, guys like him, guys like Michael Thorbjornsen, all they need to do is be right with the putter like a couple weeks a year, and they can have realistic chances to win tournaments. I mean, they just hit the ball so well. They hit the ball far. They hit it. Their tee game is spot on. And there's the old saying, that you drive for show and you putt for dough. But if you're not driving in the fairway, you're not going to be putting for anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, both those guys are exceptional drivers of the golf ball, which really sets you up to be successful. And if you have a good week putting, those guys are always going to be in the mix of whatever they're playing in.
Yeah. What kind of person's Keegan?
He's tenacious. I mean, the one thing I think that differentiates him with some of the other guys that play on the tour is like, he has not lost his will to win, his desire to win. Like he wants to win. He's super competitive. He's highly respected amongst his peers.
When he chased Tommy Fleetwood down at Travelers, for example, this year,
Yep.
like you were the least surprised person in the crowd, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have been any happier that Fleetwood finally won a tournament, because I know how difficult it is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think sometimes it's tough to get that monkey off your back. I mean, listen, he's won other places, but to get your first PGA Tour win, that's a pretty difficult thing to do. So, but there's no surprise, there's no quitting Keegan, and I think that's the reason I'd like to see him. Honestly, I feel like the whole, can he coach? Can he be the captain? I feel like that's completely overblown.
Really?
I think, yeah, I to be honest with you, this is not to take anything away from the captain of a Ryder Cup team, but the facts are pretty simple. You assemble two teams to play a match against one another, right? And the team that plays the best golf ends up winning. Yeah, maybe there's some decisions as to, you don't know who you're drawing against. You know what I mean? When you're picking, the matches, right? You just know you're setting out guy one versus, right. So, I don't know so much that you're pairing players together, you're trying to get a vibe for what's going on with them. But, honestly, I feel like there would have been a way. Maybe he's not playing 5 matches, right? And maybe that limits you from, being able to make some of the decisions that you want to make, because you're limiting his ability to play. But why couldn't he have played on day one in the last group of, I think, what is it, foursomes in the morning and 4-ball in the afternoon? Why couldn't he play 4-ball in the afternoon? Or for that matter, why couldn't he have been first out in foursomes, right? Which would have totally had the whole place jacked, right? Having a guy who, grew up playing college golf and was sneaking out on Bethpage, because
Bethpage was Bethpage was St. John's course. I mean, that's where they played their golf.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would have liked to seen him play. I just, there's no chance that he's not one of the 12 best guys. Um,
Yeah, that's for
especially,
sure.
especially in that format,
Yeah. Yeah.
he has so much energy. It'll be interesting to see because he's a captain, right? So he needs to be kind of like this, right? And he just has so much energy. It'll just be interesting to see how he can temper that energy, you know what I mean, as a captain.
Well,
So
but it was a completely selfless decision. Were you surprised that he made it?
I feel like if he decides to play, it's a no one situation for him, right? I mean, the expectation is we're playing at Bethpage and we're supposed to win that event, right? So if he plays, then the pundits would be like, well, he played, he couldn't be a captain, blah 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 blah. But I think the whole captain thing is uh,
I agree with you 100%. You set your lineup, and then what are you going to tell Scotty Scheffler to do when he's out on the gut? There's nothing. There's no in-game decisions that you're going to make. These guys are making the game decisions on their own with their caddies like they do every week of the year. Whether it's competitive in a four or whatever, like their teammates will make those to the captains. I'm with you. I 100% agree with you. I'm just curious if, like, I mean, how about this? The build up to the event, like some talk about it, but if he were playing, I think it would be 10x what it is right now.
well, the one thing I think that helped to make his decision, and one reason I think that maybe he made the right decision, is he talked about how he was playing and he couldn't even focus on his own golf, right? So I suppose, but from my perspective, I feel like the whole captaincy is just, it's a little bit overblown as to what their contribution is. I mean, sure, there can be a calming effect, but I mean, if you look at like Watson and what happened with Mickelson, like Mickelson showed no respect to Watson, in my opinion. You know what I mean? A legend of the game. Um, and so they threw him under the bus and blamed him for losing. Essentially, isn't that what Mickelson did? Right? I just, I don't know. To me, it's pretty simple. You're picking all-star teams essentially. I mean, 6 guys are making it through automatic qualifying, and then you're picking other guys to play on your team. I think that's the biggest factor is who are the guys that you're picking, right? If
Yeah.
I'm picking that team, there's no chance Chris Cotterup isn't on that team. He's from New Jersey, another Challenge Cup guy, by the way. All right. He's from New Jersey. He's a bomber. He fits that course really well. He's some new blood, right? There's a good old boys network, and I just, my question to you is like, do we end up having the best? I think one of our flaws is, do we end up with the best 12 guys on our team? I think, I think that's the biggest challenge for a captain is. And listen, it's easy to Monday quarterback or to talk about all of this, right? We have no
Yeah.
idea what Goddard would do for the first time playing in a Ryder Cup, but
Yeah. Well,
there's a part of you.
he was just so bad in the last couple tournaments. I mean, I think that had he played a little bit better, he would have been able to make the argument of his recent form, which obviously was very on when he went to the Open and won the Scottish. I think that he would have had a better argument. I just think he lost the momentum of his argument the way he played in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think though, as a coach, you gotta have some. So part of like being a coach, right? So I think it really starts at the collegiate level. Is part of being a coach is having like some insight, you know what I mean, as to what a player might be or how a player might perform. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like we've already given guys a chance, you know what I mean, to play in this competition.
Yeah.
And listen, our results weren't good at all at the last, in the
Yeah.
last Ryder Cup. So um, I just feel like some new blood, you know what I mean, would have might have been a little bit better, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. We're playing on our soil. I mean, typically it's a huge advantage, the home course advantage. At least it has been for most of the years in the Ryder Cup. And you know, Keegan's in a no-win situation. I mean,
Well, but not now. He is, and now he's in an all-win situation.
yeah,
I mean,
I
the
feel like he's
concept
still
of
in.
him.
I still feel like
The concept of him playing though is done and over. And the fact is, he is 9 through 12 guy, let's call it. And this team's not going to be won or lost on the 9 through 12.
The naysayers will say, though, if they lose, he should have played, right? I mean, that's what they'll say, right? I mean, you can never get it right.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, look, no matter what he did, the only way to get this right is to win.
Yeah.
That is regardless of what that decision was.
It would have been crazy if he was a top 6 guy, because he would have had, then would he have deferred?
Had to play. No, had to play.
Top 6. But would he have deferred the captaincy to somebody else?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any question, of course.
I mean, listen, this was supposed to be Tiger's gig in the first place. He was offered it to start with, right? And he turned it down. So, and initially he was the first person that was asked for it. I mean, truth be told, if Mickelson had done things differently, it 100% would have been his, right? Because in no better place, like the people in New York absolutely loved Phil in his heyday. So that would have been, in my opinion, it would have been his captaincy, really.
Agreed.
And then Keegan definitely would have been on the team under those circumstances,
Yeah. So let's talk about Bethpage for just a second. It's a place you're deeply familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Challenge Cup plays there every single year.
Not on the black.
Not on the. I mean, you want to get around. You want to get the junior golfers around the course, right? I mean, but you play red. You play red, and from my understanding, red is not a not a walk in the park or a picnic.
No,
right?
I mean, all the courses there are in quality golf courses. They all got a little bit of bite to them, in great condition. It's a pretty special place.
What do you, if it wasn't a muni, right? Would you think Bethpage would still be considered as great as it is?
Boy, that's a great question. I mean, listen, the block is an extremely difficult golf course. So
yes,
I don't see how it's not in someone's top 25. It's such a difficult course.
What makes it? What do you think it makes it so difficult? It's not just the high rough, right? What makes it as difficult as
it's long? It's long, right? So the one thing the U.S. will have an advantage is they can set the course up, any way they want it, right? And so typically when they have a major championship there, it's one of the longer courses that they'll play, and the rough is usually up. And you also have an element that's different than a lot of tournaments. I mean, you have the New Yorkers to deal with. I mean, that's just a fact. It's a big fact.
Yeah, I mean, you think it's going to be great. I mean, 50,000. How about this? Think about it in these terms. Are you going, by the way?
I'm not.
Okay. So,
and the reason I'm not is I went to Brookline.
Yeah.
And while it's a cool experience, it's very difficult to watch golf.
No, it's not. Well, I was about to say, forget Sunday. Sunday, there's 12 groups on the course. It's singles.
That's a little bit better, but the foursomes and the four ball, it's brutal.
There's 4 groups on the golf course at any point for 2 days.
Right.
And 50,000 fans.
It's insane.
Now, having said that, I posed this question to a friend of mine offline today. He said, by far, no question about it, worst golf watching experience I've ever had is at the Ryder Cup.
I'd say that isn't too far off. The year I went, I met President Bush, so that was cool for me. I was a lot younger.
Here's the turn. Top 5 golf experience I've ever had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So you just have to get your mindset as to what you're actually going to be doing there. You put the earphone on, you listen to the action, and you appreciate.
When I went, I didn't get a chance to put the earphone on because I ran into somebody every 5 steps I took. So it was like, hey, how's it going? How you been? What's going on?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny that we sit here and we talk about the Challenge Cup, and we don't mention Tim Petrovic, and we don't mention Richie Waransky, and I don't think we did Jim Redder, James Driscoll. I mean, just so many that have come from New England.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
over the
and we
years.
haven't even gotten to the girls' side. You've got Megan, who's one of
Yeah,
the best players on the LPGA tour. I mean, yeah, Brittany Altamari. I mean, we had one year when you speak of the women's equivalent of the Ryder Cup, right? I mean, it was Brittany, it was Megan, and uh, the girl from New York who played in our stuff, Cindy. Shoot. Um, we had 3 girls one year in the Solheim Cup
yeah,
from
that's
the
cool.
Challenge Cup that were on the Solheim Cup team, which was for the USA, which was insane.
Yeah, I mean, it mustn't. I mean, it must. It keeps you young, right? I mean, watching these kids, and they're just getting better and better, and the equipment, and they're further and further.
It's
Right.
just, I mean, it's such a listen, I take a lot of pride in everything that kids do, like, they're not kids anymore, they're adults, and the one cool thing about what we do is that we maintain these relationships with people. I tell people once you're a member of Challenge Cup Nation, it's a for life membership, and it really is. I mean, talking about one of the first, fellas that we were talking about at the beginning of our talk here today, Brent Warner. I mean, he played on the same team as Bill Haas. Bill Haas actually won the FedEx Cup one year. Brent was better than Bill Haas. I mean,
Mhm.
so in college, and he definitely could have made it doing that, but that's not what he wanted to do. He didn't find he didn't find that golf was fulfilling really for him, and so he works in France now. He works for this economic um company that really, it's a worldwide company that he works for. It's for the betterment of the world, right? I mean, what he's doing, he's trying to come up with plans for how to make, have the most green energy that we can have in the world. And he's a renowned expert in his field, and like, I take as much pride in somebody doing something like that. I mean, listen, before Matt Pazziali blew up as a golfer, he was a firefighter, still playing in, some of our amateur tournaments and stuff like that. I mean, Matt and I have been good friends forever. And I take pride in people living successful lives, having families, enjoying life. I mean, that's really what life is all about, right? I mean,
That's
you
it.
know, enjoying the time that we're here. We probably only get to do this, for what we know, we probably only get to do this once, right?
Yeah,
So while we're here, we should try to enjoy what we're doing, and contribute to other people,
yeah,
and that's kind of my philosophy that I live by.
I love it. Well, Dave, listen, you mean personally, you've been unbelievable to me and my family. My son had an amazing college experience. Never would have gotten there if it wasn't for you and the Challenge Cup, and not only Challenge Cup, but like you take the beauty of. So I'm not going to talk about what other tours do because I don't know, but I can tell you that like when kids play on your tour, you take a personal interest in their success past the tour. And while you told the story about Keegan going to St. John's and how intricately you were involved in that. And the truth is the same was true for you and my son going to Williams College. And it just completely altered the direction of his life because of not only the friends he made, but the coach he played for, won a college golf tournament. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about nervous. I mean, he wasn't a kid who was always at the top of the leaderboard. He's a middle of the pack kid, but
Yeah.
everybody always loved playing with him, and he always did his best, whatever that score was. And, you know, to take interest in kids who finish in the middle of the pack, it shows the character of the man that you are, because not everybody does that, especially in sports. A lot of times you get that, I'll look at the top 10, but if you're not in the top 10, I don't care about you. And, the fact that you're getting on phone calls at night to place a kid at a Division III college, uh, I mean, that just speaks to your character.
I mean, just to tell you how I'm wired, the easiest phone calls to make, and I feel like this is for anybody who's a mentor, right? And for anybody who's a teacher, like, the easiest things to do are to help people, or to congratulate people for their success. The toughest calls to make, and the time that people need you the most, is when somebody, like, give you an example, Jared Nelson, who went to UConn, he played in the Gately Cup like maybe about a month ago. And his next tournament that he played in, I can't remember what it was, or maybe he played in, maybe he played Providence Open. I think that's what it was. He played Providence Open, and then he plays Connecticut Open, and he ends up losing by a stroke. You know, so I bet you very few people reached out to Jared, right, to say, hey man, you know, good job, you know, hang in there. And I sent him a note of encouragement, got on the phone with him, talked to him for a few minutes. I'm like, I said, dude, just keep on grinding. I just keep battling. I said, you know, I go, it's so easy to focus on the fact that you made bogey on 18, the last hole of the tournament and lost by 1. I said, but you wouldn't have even been there if you didn't play phenomenal golf during the week, you know, and just speed ahead to, you know, a couple weeks later and he's winning a tournament, you know, and so, you know, it just goes to show you, you know, winning a couple tournaments actually in August. And it just goes to show you, you know, that, you know, it's a tough game, right? Only one person walks away and feels satisfied at the end of a week when you play this darn game. So, you know, for me, I, I don't always, I'm not the first person to always congratulate somebody, you know, usually I'll do it in my time, but I'm the first person, if somebody doesn't have the success that they wanted to have, to reach out to them, because it's a lonely game. You know, when you don't get the job done, you know, it's a lonely spot. You know, I've experienced it with my brother, you know, and know how it, I personally don't know how it feels, but I've seen firsthand with my brother how it feels, you know, when you don't finish it off. And even with all the other guys who play, you know what I mean, that are good players and reach out to me. You know, there's guys that go to college and they're not playing as well as they, you know, as they have, as they would expect to. And, you know, one great story I have is Greg Sampson, who was a great junior player with us and went, to Old Dominion and shot a lot of good scores as a junior player, could easily shoot under par. He was playing in tournaments and he was having rounds. He was like 3, 4, 5 under par. And he would end up getting in the house and he'd only shoot like 1 under, 2 under even. And he's like, and so we're going back and forth and I'm just trying to encourage him. I'm not really thinking about like, what should I say to him that's going to make a difference? And so finally one day it all just clicks. I'm like, geez, I'm not offering this guy anything. And I said, hey, Greg, I said, can you tell me? I said, what are you thinking about when you get to 2, 3, when you get to 4 or 5 under? I go, what's your thought? Oh, I just want to get in the house at 4 or 5 under. And it all just clicks. I'm like, you know something? I said, that's the wrong mentality. I said, if you can get to 4 or 5 under, where's 6, 7, and 8?
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that's got to be your mentality. I'm like, you got to think like, hey, I don't want to leave the course today. Like, I don't want to get in the clubhouse. I want to stay out here and just keep going. Right. And the next tournament he went to, he used that mentality and boom, it happened. So
See, that's the difference, Dave. I know when I'm at 3 or 4 over, I can get to 5 or 6.
yeah, just get me to the house right away. Right.
I want to get to the house. There's no question. But, you know, to your point about the sport being lonely, and we'll end on this, is that I always had the philosophy as a parent, especially being someone who plays the game, that whenever my son had hard days, and there were a lot of them over the course of his career, I loved him more. I had to turn up my level of understanding, compassion, and empathy because I know how difficult this game is. And it's hard for someone who doesn't play to understand how a lip out on 3 for par could lead to a 46. And
yeah, no doubt.
and you know, that one stroke. Now, you could argue emotionally, mentally, you shouldn't let. Sometimes you just don't get the breaks. And like, you could replay rounds in your head. I mean, the other day, 14 fairways, I shot 86. Then the next couple days back after that, 4 fairways, I shoot 77. Like, you know, stupid.
There's a moment of truth in every round of golf, and you go one way or the other when that moment of truth happens. If you make that 10-footer for par, usually it just keeps you around chugging that way. And if you don't, I mean, because the game is a domino game, you know, and if they're falling in your favor, then it can, you know, it can be a great experience. And then when it starts going the opposite way, it can really snowball. So, you know, listen, you got to get to some ability level. And then once you get to a certain ability level, it just becomes such a mental game, really. You know, it's just, you know, you just got to stay in the belief system that, hey, I'm capable of being 3, 4, 5 under. Like these players that are good players, like even your son, like he's capable of rattling off a 6-hole stretch of playing 2, 3, 4 under par, right? But you got to stay in the mindset, like, hey, all right, I didn't get off to a great start, but what are the next 6 going to be, right? Or what are the next 9 going to be, right? You just don't know. You know, it's
Yeah,
a crazy game.
I'll tell him you said that. He's touched the golf club one time in the last 6 weeks. He's in New
Yeah,
York
well,
City
it's different when
working.
you do that.
Well, he came out with me the other day and shot 2 over. Hadn't touched the club. He said, "I think I found the secret, Dad." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I get it. I understand."
Less expectation, better results.
Every time. Dave Adamonis, he is the owner and commissioner of the Challenge Cup Tour. It is New England and South down to New York, the Met areas, best junior golf tour there is. And he was here with us today talking about Keegan Bradley, who spent time on that tour and who he influenced over his career. The Ryder Cup coming up in a couple of weeks, Dave. It was a pleasure to chat with you. You know, we could do it all day long, but we'll end it here. Thanks so much.
Jay, on a professional level, I'd just like to thank you for your support of the Challenge Cup too. You know, you've been generous to us and really appreciate what you do to help us out.
Dave, thanks. I appreciate that. All right, JaySapChats. That's another episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to JaySapChats. I hope you leave a little bit better than you came. And here's wishing you a beautiful week.